I'm Andrea Klim, and you are watching Turn to the Stars. Today is October 8th, 2014, and today the topic, as you can see, is going to be talking about the solar eclipse in Scorpio that is occurring on October 23rd, 2014. But also, during the process of the show, the topics that I'm going to be talking about are what's going on at Turn to the Stars, what's on our calendar, which is the next Psychic and Holistic Fair at the Yard restaurant in Manchester, New Hampshire. And I'm also going to talk about last night's total lunar eclipse that could have been seen early this morning here on the East Coast if we didn't have the cloud cover and the rain. I'm also going to be talking about Mercury's retrograde and then the partial solar eclipse. And so first, to start out, I want to just share with you some information which is very exciting about changes at Turn to the Stars. We're going to be having our 26th Psychic and Holistic Fair on Saturday, November 22nd from 10 to 4. And that is going to be at the Yard restaurant in Manchester, New Hampshire. And the theme of this fair is an exploration into the unknown. And we are, as usual, offering insightful readings, healing therapies, and holistic vendors. And we actually have quite a few new types of readings to offer. And as always, we have a goal of raising the awareness of our community to the quality of holistic healing. And we are going to be featuring a mediumship gallery, a spirit's journey beyond the veil, an evidential mediumship gallery with Sheila Clark and Danielle Dion from 1 to 3. So we invite you to enjoy an afternoon of messages from across the veil. And Sheila and Danielle are spiritual mediums, and they will be connecting with the spirit world, bringing back validation and messages from loved ones who have crossed over to some members of the audience. For more information on this event or seat reservation, you can look at www.turntothestars.com. And as I said earlier, last night, we all experienced the changing emotions inspired by the total lunar eclipse. This morning, on the other side of the eclipse, I had a vision of standing at the side of a huge, big, round, dark hole, and all of a sudden there was this light that just filled the hole, and I had a blast of total awareness, which I'm sure many, many people have in the light of this total lunar eclipse. Total lunar eclipse occurs at the time of a full moon, and this light lit up, what it does what it inspires is to light up the patterns of our past associated with relationships. And I could see the strings that were still attached and the possibilities of how I could, and we all could, now take a different approach moving forward because of awareness, because of remembrance, and because of the wisdom of life that we carry forward from those past experiences. And so I also realized on the light side of this lunar eclipse, the difference now versus then. The inspiration of the energy of the planet Uranus. Uranus is the planet that was right next to this full moon total lunar eclipse, which was the second of 4 that we're experiencing between 2014 and 2015, that tetrad of total lunar eclipses. So Uranus is the great awakener. It could have made us given this feeling like everything is so weird, everything is so different. Some people have had this feeling of being on the outside looking in, and just it seems all so surreal. So the inspiration of that planet Uranus right beside the lunar eclipse inspires taking a look at our experiences from a whole different perspective. sort of like looking at things from outside the box rather than inside the box, looking at things that are of an emotional nature from a very different perspective. Aries, this was an Aries lunar eclipse, so it did inspire those primal instincts, but it also inspired a whole different perspective on looking at the past as far in reference to the right here in our future. So here's a note that is really important with this energy. Over the course of the next 6 months, every full moon will bring more and more emotional awareness through the fullness of the light shined onto our soul's journeys. The moon does inspire us to look and recognize and become aware of what our soul has carried into this life. So what is this life about? So the next 6 full moons, and this is my first image that I have that we're going to put up on the screen. And these are the dates of the next 6 full moons. Of course, last night marked the beginning of this whole pattern of change that is being brought into our lives. November 6th is the next full moon, and that is going to be the full moon that precedes the solar eclipse that we're talking about during today's show. The next full moon is December 6, 2014. The next is January 4th, and the next February 3rd of 2015, and March 5th of 2015, before we start a whole new series of eclipses that come in 2015. And as I said before, very important, I highly recommend that you pay extra attention to the week before the dates I just listed. The 6 dates for the full moons, and what your experiences are and how you feel about them, because there's going to be these huge aha moments through the process of these next 6 months and these full moons. So those dates are really important. Take the time to be aware of your soul's journey, and remember to always turn toward the light of the sun, the spirit of creation, for guidance. It's so easy as humans to get caught in negative patterns, negative things that sort of try to take over our life. So it's very important for us to always turn back to the sun. The sun is the constant, the light that all the planets revolve and follow. So I wanted to just put that little reminder in there. Mercury's retrograde is the next topic I want to talk about, which is already in process because today is October 9th. So October 4th through October 25th is a precursor. It really is a precursor of what is showing us what is about to change in our lives. Mercury's retrograde. Mercury is the planet of knowledge, education, thought processes, logic, reason. And when it goes retrograde, which it does, it reached on October 4th, it went retrograde, and that began at 2 degrees in the constellation of Scorpio. And what happens in that perspective, or that time period, while Mercury is retrograde, it actually goes back into the constellation of Libra. It appears that way to 16 degrees. So this is really a time between October 4th and October 25th, very important, a time for reflection, respite, a respite of our minds, and preparation for the solar eclipse. It is a time we're preparing for a new direction, a new identity, and with the knowledge that there's something new to come. So let's review where we've been. Let's look backwards. And I have a map of what that Mercury's path before, during, and after the retrograde. And if you could just take note of these dates. So we kind of go back to September 14th, and that was actually what we call the before shadow, which began when Mercury was at 16 degrees in the constellation of Libra. And during that time, between September 14th through October 4th, I recommended, talked about it on the show, to take note of your ideas, your studies, your communications, until the retrograde started. It would have been helpful. October 4th was when Mercury began its retrograde, and it was at the degrees of 2 in the constellation of Scorpio. So it begins a time between October 4th and October 16th, a time for research, reflection. It's not good for making permanent decisions, but for testing and examination. And October 16th is a very important time because if we could put that back up there again, October 16 is the time when the Sun and Mercury, the planet, actually conjoin in the constellation of Libra at 23 degrees. And it is symbolic of having epiphanies, realizations of what this retrograde is all about. And then we move forward to October 25th, which is Mercury retrograde ends and the after shadow begins. And this is a time between October 25th and November 10th where we integration begins of those things that we realize by going back over them. And November 10th is Mercury is past the shadow of the retrograde. And so this is a really great calendar because Mercury retrograde from October 4th through the 25th, it brings up, we experience delays, we experience mix-ups, we experience communication issues with good reason. Mercury retrograde period brings these experiences, providing knowledge that will bring the means to a better end in whatever area of your life this retrograde occurs. If you look to your birth chart and you know how to follow the perimeters of the cusps and the degrees, if you look to your chart, you'll see the area where these delays will provide you with that means to a better end. If you look into your birth chart and you find 16 degrees of Libra and you take your finger and move it forward to 2 degrees of Scorpio, and then take your finger, go back to 16 degrees, and then from 16 back to 2. That is the area that Mercury is going to cover once, twice, 3 times. And it gives us 3 chances to uncover whatever we didn't see, identify, realize, understand the first time around from a very logical perspective. So it did begin, Mercury retrograde did begin very emotional, bringing up a lot of emotion and even power struggles, mental, those type of things, because Scorpio is a very powerful sign. And I do have a, let's see here. We did talk about that Mercury's retrograde. So now I want to go and I want to talk about the partial solar eclipse, which is occurring on October 23rd at 6:48 p.m. Eastern Time, and it occurs at exactly 0 degrees of Scorpio. And its effects can be felt up to 6 months after the actual date of the eclipse. Solar eclipses really bring the focus to our identity, who we are, and what we are, what is changing in our lives moving forward. And I have a chart, which is an astrology chart showing the solar eclipse. It's highlighted by the yellow circle down on the right side about 4 o'clock if you were to look at a clock on the wall. And you can see the eclipse there shadowed in the yellow with the sun, the moon, Mercury, and the north node of the moon. And just identifying that on the chart first. I'll come back to this after, but I also want to show you another picture, which is next in line. This is what a partial solar eclipse appears like. It is not a complete block of the sun. It is a partial, and this occurs again October 23rd here on the East Coast. We could see this about 6:48 p.m. And the next picture I have is a picture of the area where this eclipse can be seen, at least partially. The eastern side of Asia, much of North America, the Pacific, and the Atlantic. All that red area is especially the central area is especially where the eclipse can be seen in totality, but the outer perimeters are partial appearance of this partial solar eclipse. So coming back now to talk more about the energy influence of this partial solar eclipse in the sign of Scorpio, brings to light matters related to intimacy, control, power, money, and sharing. And sharing will become a central focus with this Scorpio energy. The eclipse is about new beginnings. It's in all these areas that I just mentioned, all areas to do with intimacy, control, power, money, sharing, central focus on these areas. And occurring in Scorpio, this eclipse is about strengthening ourselves from the inside out. We can feel extremes of emotion as our fears of loss, betrayal, or the exposure of our vulnerabilities are uncovered. This eclipse will illuminate our emotional and financial investments and finally challenge them. It does bring to light, if you're looking at the map of time and history, it could bring to light soul memories of the Dark Ages. And my recommendation to everyone in our forward movement, in our forward path ahead, use your magic with care. We each have a sense of magic. We each have a special talents, special abilities. So be careful how you use your magic. Use it toward bringing positive change. Put your energy into areas which are positive movement ahead, and letting go of the need to have revenge, the need to be secretive, hide things. Those are all some of the negative qualities of Scorpio. Vengeance, jealousy, those are some things that can come up. So be very careful how you use your magic. We might take steps toward self-mastery, self-empowerment by tackling things that undermine us and that take away our power, such as compulsive behaviors, addictions, our debts. Take a look at these areas. We might work on learning about intimacy not only with others, but also with ourselves. Experiences may be such that we're asked to see others' values, to consider their values rather than expect that they share the same values as us. Very important. Scorpio is a very powerful, intense energy, and circumstances may be such that we're focused to take steps toward managing and handling our shared resources with others, our debts, our taxes, more effectively. Intimate partnerships may be left, partnerships which have been intimate may be left behind, or a source of money might end. And either of these situations pushes us to learn to depend on ourselves and to recognize that we don't necessarily need these things to survive. Again, solar eclipse is about change, about letting go of the things that we may have obsessively held on to. Ultimately, we're now in a position to understand that changes or endings are necessary for our own growth and that we can handle these things. I always recommend, as we are experiencing eclipses, which on a very big level do indicate that we're in a period where things are shifting, things are changing, our lives are either relationships, things from the past that are not in our best interest are ending. There's new movement, new forward, new direction coming. So it takes some time for these things to settle. It takes some time for these things for us to sort of wrap our minds around them, to digest them, to see what it's all about. So it's a good time for focusing on some of the constructive traits of the sign of Scorpio, which are passionate, resourcefulness, focused, probing deep into things that are a mystery, our perception, and to consider how to positively incorporate these qualities in our lives. So to concentrate or even obsess on these things is not a bad idea for at least a month or so. Scorpio new moons, which is what this partial solar eclipse is, are generally good for working on our own self-mastery skills. We may want to identify the things in our lives that make us feel out of control, such as addictions, debts, work, freeing ourselves of these emotional burdens. We can explore what is missing in our lives that leads us to act on these self-destructive behaviors. So it's interesting when we examine the astrological chart of this eclipse, we see that Venus is right beside the eclipse, and it is offering, and there it is on the chart. You see the sun, the moon, and Venus right beside it at 0 Scorpio. Pretty intense energy. And we see that blue line that stretches right up to Neptune, which offers relief to Neptune in Pisces. It doesn't offer relief, it offers a sense of relief that is a string of energy that ultimately we gain relief through its output, its inspiration. So what this does is it emphasizes, when we see Venus right next to the sun and the moon, it reinforces and emphasizes the challenges that we are facing in our value systems, yet it also offers emotional clarity at the same time. So here we are getting this glimpse of patterns which we might be challenged to change, to take a look at, to identify, uncover those mysteries, and be aware of how these patterns have become fixed for us. And at the same time, we have this relief that is provided through this connection to Neptune of depth and clarity emotionally. So if we can slow down long enough to really pay respect to those feelings, it would serve us well. And this chart, we can also see that we could find that people are more cooperative through this energy in our quest, and close personal relationships are deeply involved. Venus is about relationships. In the sign of Scorpio, it is about transformation. It is about being sensitive, caring, and gentle to other people's values. They may not be ours, but they are their values. There can be situations that are brought up in which we feel pressured to bring more harmony to our relationships. With the eclipse occurring while Mercury is retrograde, which I talked about earlier, and you can see that down, if you at the edge of that yellow circle, you can see Mercury and the numbers are red, and that's the indication that Mercury is retrograde. With the eclipse occurring while Mercury is retrograde and close to Mercury's direct station, which is October 25th, we should be especially aware of the potential for foggy, wishful thinking. And because we're not really that clear, whenever a planet, especially Mercury, when it stations, meaning that it's slowing down, it's preparing to go in a different direction, it feels like a bouncy or a real bumpy ride. So we should be aware of that period, that things could appear a little foggy, a little bit topsy-turvy. However, with the eclipse about to end, with the Mercury retrograde about to end, and with the partial solar eclipse upon us, the intuition is certainly heightened with the Scorpio energy, but the details of our plans now may be hidden, overlooked, or unclear. So even though we have this emotional awareness that is happening, we also have this sense of confusion because of Mercury stationing. We may need to look back before moving forward. So with this eclipse, we might experience a strong urge to act on impulse. However, it'll be very important to avoid jumping to conclusions and asserting ourselves without considering other people's feelings and reactions. There's a huge, big difference between asserting ourselves from a place of healthy confidence and asserting ourselves rashly or blindly. So with this solar eclipse there is this very potent Scorpio energy. We have the chance to make important changes in our lives that will benefit us well beyond this moon cycle. And I know I'm getting pretty close to the end of the show, and I just want to talk very quickly about a movie that I saw this past weekend, which was called The Fault in Our Stars. And it was a real tearjerker, a very, very, very nicely done movie, but it was sort of brought to light the doorway that we each have, the doorway to our dreams. But this is what it brought up for me, is an awareness. The doorway to our dreams is often the doorway through which we have the most fears. So I wanted to bring that to our attention because there was a lot of pain by very young people that was experienced in this movie. But there was also some really beautiful, wonderful things that happened, which both of the main characters were very fearful of experiencing. So anyway, I just wanted to bring that up in light of this partial solar eclipse and remind you to turn to the stars, and you'll find your answers there. Until next week, take good care. I'll see you then.